as you all probably know by now, one of my favorite parts of my job here at InMotion Now is getting to use our own products. And there is no better example of this than our very own marketing team. And I'm so excited that they are willing to share some of their insider stories with us today. Please join me in welcoming Elise Huser, our product marketing manager, who was instrumental to the planning, creation, and execution of the 2020 Creative Management Report, created in partnership with InSource. We will try to save time for Q&A for this session, so please continue to share those great questions that you'd like to hear Elise answer. Hi, Elise.
Hi, Brittany. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for being here. I'll let you take it from here.
Sounds good. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Thank you, everyone, for coming today to the session. So a quick introduction. My name is Elise Huser. I'm the product marketing manager here at InMotion Now. And I have been very fortunate to have been here for all 3 years of our creative management report. And so I've gotten to see a lot of the evolution of how we do this process every year. And so I'm excited to share with you some of the ways that we were able to update our process and create some improvements to that process between 2019 and then 2020 using Ignite. We'll start with just sharing just a little background on the report. If you aren't familiar with the report, this is it. This is the 2020 report. It is available in the GoToWebinar panel for download now. So if you haven't downloaded it or want to re-download it, you can do that. But basically, we build this report every year to uncover the top trends and challenges that in-house creative and marketing teams are facing. And there's really 2 main pillars that make up this report. The first is the survey we do. We survey several hundred in-house and creative professionals every year as part of the report. And then, of course, we also have several really great contributors. Actually, Elise Bennon from the previous session was one of our contributors this year, and some previous InMomentum speakers also joined us as contributors this year. And so they really come in and add a lot of narration to the data. So you get great data, and you also get insight and best practices and some actionable takeaways in response to that data. And then we just want to point out as well that in past years, in 2019 especially, we've actually tapped some of our own customers because as we've seen here at InMomentum, some of our customers are awesome thought leaders in this industry. So the survey Brittany mentioned earlier, if you're at all interested in contributing in any way, definitely answer that in the survey, and of course we'll reach out. But one way that we've heard a lot of feedback on how our customers use this report is to actually benchmark their team against industry metrics. And so we report on things every year, like the average number of rounds of review a proof typically takes to be completed. And so we have sort of this industry benchmark that we've been tracking for 3 years. And so it can be really useful if you're beginning to start using these metrics and tracking certain key metrics on your team to have a benchmark. So definitely something I would encourage everyone to do. Now, I want to go through just a couple findings from the report. Again, if you're not familiar with the report, this will give you some background into some of the things that we found this year and some of the benchmarking stats that we look at every year. So these first 2 metrics are my favorites from the report. This first one is a unique question that we asked for the first time this year. And we basically, I think I know, and I'm sure everyone here knows and recognizes that creative work is invaluable to driving business objectives. But we've never really had like a number to put on that. And so we asked this question, and we got 89% of our survey respondents said that creative work is important for driving business objectives. And so it's just really nice to have that number and for it to be such an overwhelmingly positive number. So that number made me very happy when we saw that. Another one that's probably the most interesting stat that we had this year from the report was that 2/3 of creative teams report that they are being asked to take on new responsibilities outside of the traditional creative work. And you'll have to download the full report to see the list of what some of those new responsibilities are, and our contributors have some really great insights on that trend as well. But again, that was another new question that we'd never asked, but we were starting to suspect that that might be the case, and it was confirmed. And so that was a really interesting finding this year. These last 2 stats I'll share are kind of benchmark metrics. So the first one is a question we have asked every year of the report, and I'm sure we'll continue asking it because it really just gets right to the crux of everything, which is what are the top challenges facing creative teams this year. And what is very interesting about this stat, I think, is that we've asked it for 3 years, and it has been the same answer for 3 years running, which tells me that these challenges are certainly persistent. Now, the way we ask this question is we just basically say rank all of these, and there's a slightly longer list than this, but we cropped it. But there, we ask everyone to just rank what of these do you consider a top challenge. So the numbers themselves have shifted around a little bit, but the actual order of these challenges have not changed for 3 years. And so what that tells me is creative teams are persistently struggling with the speed of work they have to do and the amount of work they have to do. To the point that kind of a lot of what Elise and Andy were just talking about, this being a strategic contributor, kind of takes a back seat as they're focused on these challenges around efficiency. Then this other metric is one that I think is kind of a newer benchmark for us. We've asked it for a couple of years. I want to keep asking it, and I'm hoping to see some shifts on this metric in the future. But essentially, what we have found is that only about 20%, less than 20% of creative teams consistently get quantitative feedback on how creative work is performing in the market. And so, again, I do say quantitative. That's not, how did it go? It's fine. Like numbers. What are click-through rates? What's social engagement? Like, what are the metrics that drive success for this project, and did our creative work help us achieve them? And then again, about half, a little more than half of creatives are almost never getting that, never or rarely getting that information. So I definitely see this as an area potentially for teams to look at improving, and I definitely hope to see these trends moving in a positive direction in future years as we continue to track this benchmarking stat. So speaking of metrics, I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys some of the metrics that we measure for success for the Creative Management Report every year. So this is a thought leadership piece for us. And so our primary objective is reach. We just really want to make sure we are reaching a lot of people in the industry with this, and also relevancy. So these are metrics for the 2020 report. We had over 600 respondents to the survey, which was a new high for us. So that we were really excited about hitting that next sort of milestone in terms of survey respondents. And we'll talk about some of the ways our process helped us achieve that. We've also, at this point in time, when I pulled these numbers, had over 2,000 report downloads. Of course, that number is constantly changing. People download just about every day. So that tends to go up over time as well. But again, that's 2,000 unique people that have accessed the survey. So that tells us a lot about reach that we're getting. And then we've also had 14 PR placements. And that's not a vanity metric. That's important because we want this report to be relevant and interesting and useful to the industry. So what tells us when a trade publication sees this report and wants to write about it, that's telling us that it's valuable to them, it's valuable to the industry, or they wouldn't bother. So it's really hard to get attention on PR stuff. So seeing those placements is a really good indicator to us that people are finding this stuff useful. So now I wanted to get into the actual process that we use for building this report. And so this is a fairly high level view of how it works, and it's worked about the same way every year. And what I want to start by saying is I'm going to be talking about efficiency today. But the objective of our efficiency is not to shorten the overall process, but to optimize each stage of the process. This is somewhat of a unique project, I think, in that in several ways, but in one way is that it's about a 6-month process, and there's really no changing that. We're really not going to, be able to shorten that very much. There's a lot of reasons why it needs to take that long. And you'll kind of see that as we get into it. So the goal is not to do it in less time. We're not trying to get down to 5 months or 4 months. It's going to take us about 6 months end to end, a little longer if you count our full promotion schedule. But that's how long it takes. And so what is crucial to hitting those deadlines as we go into hitting the ultimate publish date deadline is we have to hit all of our milestones as we go. Each stage of the process has to be completed on time, so we can start the next one. They're all dependent on each other. And so our efficiencies are really about these intermediate steps and making sure we're hitting everything as we go. So the first step is we, in September every year, we sit down and we say, okay, what are the questions we're going to ask this year? Now, I talked about some benchmarking stats, and of course, we ask those every year. So that's easy. A couple questions are basically already there for us. But we don't just do the same set of questions every year. We definitely change up the questions based on what we're seeing as emerging trends and challenges in the industry. I can give you a bit of a sneak preview that no one will be surprised by. Which is that we will probably have some questions about the impact of COVID-19 in the 2021 survey. I don't know what they are yet. It's not September. I haven't started this, but I can pretty much guarantee that has had such a major impact on our industry and so many industries. It's hard to see how we could have this report without that in there somewhere. So that will probably be one portion of this. So once we get the survey questions, we put it all in SurveyMonkey and we launch it, and we start doing two things simultaneously. We promote the survey, and that's a unique factor of this campaign as well, is that we actually have two full promotional cadences, if you will. Typically, you would expect to have one per campaign, and it would be at the end. So you build the content, you build the thing, and then you promote it. We build a survey, we promote it, and then we use those results to build a report, and then we promote that. So we kind of have the same full-scale promotional process happening twice. And so that adds a lot in terms of the scope and the size of this project. At the same time that the survey and its promotional plan is running, we then go into interviewing the contributors. And we do kind of have to do these things in tandem, because if we didn't, it would add 2 months to the project, and we don't want that. And additionally, this is where time gets really important, because if you look at the months on this, like when this is happening in time, we're doing those interviews in October and November. So we're into Q4, we're getting to the end of the year, we're running up against Thanksgiving and other holidays. And so it can get really hard to get a hold of people and to schedule time. And so my personal goal is always to have those interviews done before Thanksgiving. That way we can just have them in the can and keep moving and we don't have to run into December or more complicated schedules. So that's very important that those two things kind of run and wrap up, because then as we go into December, we transition into compiling the results. And this is where it kind of feels like a science experiment in some ways. In that first step where we asked those survey questions, we took some guesses about what we thought would be interesting, relevant, represent trends or challenges in the industry. And that's informed, we talk with you guys, we have a lot of exposure to our market. So it's a good guess, but it's a hypothesis. And then when we get the survey results back and we get those interviews done, that's when we really see what held up and what didn't. The report comes out to be about 24 pages. That might include covers. So we can't put everything that is in the survey and that our contributors say to us into the report. It would just be this massive document that would probably not be the most fun reading. So we definitely have to take that time in December to really figure out what is the story, what's interesting. And some things don't make it, and some things stay on the cutting room floor. Some things do. One thing we will do with that is, and we've done that this year, is we'll produce an infographic and sometimes go into some other aspects of the data that came out of the survey that we didn't include. So that's something that we did do this year. So you can also, just a quick plug for the 2020 CMR infographic. But yeah, we basically have to consolidate and figure out what the story is. And then in January, we go into designing the final report. January is the most fun part because we get to see all this work come to fruition and we get to see this beautiful report for the first time. But it's also the scariest part because that's when we go into review and approval. And that's when we bring in the stakeholders, and that's when we start having rounds of review. And in the past, that has been the stage where we really get hung up. And that's the stage where all of a sudden your published date can look like it's in danger. And that's an area we've improved a lot. I'll talk about that. But yeah, so January is a very exciting time. And then early February, we publish the report and we go into the second promotional cadence and promote the report. Usually through March, we have some other additional activities we'll do with it as well. And yeah, that's the basic process. So I'm going to now talk to you about some of the ways that we've been able to improve this process and be more streamlined in this process in 2020 as compared to 2019. And the reason I want to compare those 2 years, one, 2020 is the current report, but also because we did both of them in Ignite, but we did them a year apart, and Ignite has grown so much. Josh talked earlier today about all of the new features that we've been launching, and so many of those have been so important. Several of the ones he mentioned, you're going to hear me talk about again, because they've been so important to making this campaign run even more smoothly than it did in 2019. Just to give you a understand our timelines here, because the years can get a little confusing. Ignite launched in October of 2018. We started building the 2019 creative management report in Ignite in September of 2018. So of course we're in-house here at InMotion now, the marketing team here. So we got into the beta. We were in Ignite early, and so we started building the report, the project, the campaign for the report. It was a project at that time in Ignite, starting right before it was launched. And then for the 2020 report, we started in September of 2019 building the 2020 report. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot of numbers. But essentially that time period, it's basically the year of 2019 and all of the work that was done that we were able to capitalize on and improve our process in. So the first big area of improvement, the first feature that brought a whole new level, I mean, I can't say enough about campaign management and how it has changed this process for us. really it comes down to two things that it did for us. The first is it gave us so much more granularity in our process. We went the project. So in 2019, that report was built in a project because campaign management did not exist at that time. It was built in a project that had 73 tasks. It had a few groups as well, but 73 tasks. This campaign that you're looking at, and this is a copy, so it's cleaner than the archives one, but this is a copy straight out of our archives of the account we use here at InMotion internally. This campaign has 160 tasks in it. So we went from 73 tasks to 160. And when I pulled that metric, that was just mind-blowing to me. I knew there was more in it, but I didn't realize we more than doubled it. And that was a light bulb moment for me of realizing that having that much more just like detail about our project and what we were working on was a game changer in our ability to be efficient, be organized, to get everything done, and not skip any pieces and not get to the end and realize, oh, we don't have that thing. One of the ways, so it's the granularity, but that granularity is only available to us because of the organization that campaign management provides. So what you see here is the way I set up this campaign. I've got a couple groups. What in my head is part 1 and part 2 of this project. And I just broke things out. It mostly follows that process slide you just saw, but there's a little difference here just because it's a little more detailed of here are these projects. And then you can go into each project and it breaks down all the tasks, which again, I've got groups for those tasks as well within the project. So it's very easy for me to find whatever I'm looking for. If somebody says, do we have, Kim, one of our contributors, do we have her headshot yet? I know exactly how to get to that very quickly. And I'll show you that view in a minute. One thing that this also did that was great was this was a real dashboard for me. I came into this view every day for about 6 months. This was one of the first things I saw every day. I at least was in it at some point. And it was really easy for me, that progress circle at the top, to see, one, it was fun to watch it count up as we got closer to the end, but then also to see, was it green and we're on track, or had it gone orange? And then if so, it was very easy for me to scroll down to this view to see, okay, which of these projects has a date that's red? Click in there, and it might be more than one, but click in there, find the task, and get down to the specific thing I needed to do in order to make sure this project was on track. And that was so much more accessible and organized than we had when it was just one big project with no progress bar. So the functionality from campaign management was a real game changer. And to give you a clear picture of what I mean when I say the granularity, this is our contributors project. So I mentioned earlier, the contributors, they're a very important part of this. They're every bit as important to the report as the survey is. And we have about 8 people that function as some level of contributor within the report. And I have to get a few different pieces from them. It's not just a matter of interviewing them. I also need, stuff like their headshots and their titles and the logo they want to use. And then I have to get their final approval. And so what I did was I went in, I made a project, and I just created a group for each of my contributors, and they all had the same tasks. It was very easy to create, because it was the same thing for everyone. But now it's very easy, in this view right here, I can hop right in and I can be like, yes, I've done Kim's interview, and on that task, I've attached the recording, the transcript, and my notes from that interview. So everything is right there at our fingertips. In the 2019 project, I ultimately handled contributors by creating one task called contributors. And that was almost useless because, when you think about, we have to get every contributor to give us their final approval, that usually happens a week before the report goes live, something in there. So that's a task that I'm working on consistently for months, but that one task, I can't mark it as complete until the project is almost completely done anyway. And so that's not enough granularity. This is the level of granularity that I really need in this project. And I now am able to have it, and it's reasonable, because of campaign management. So that one task that represented contributors in the 2019 project, there's about 50 tasks in this project now. So we went from 1 to 50. So that's how you more than double the number of tasks. That's where we see a lot of the increases. But yeah, so that's just that granularity that we have. Then our next feature that was a real game changer was Gantt views. And I specifically loved this when it came time to do those 2 promotional cadences, those 2 promotional plans, because those have a lot of tasks in them. The way I handle them is I like to create 2 groups. The first group is all the materials. That's what you see here. And this is actually from the archives project. I think I pulled it out of the archives and took a screenshot real quick. So this is the actual one. That's why everything's completed. I wanted you guys to see the actual dates. And some of these went through a proofing process as well. But this was the situation when I put this together. I literally just sat down and was like, what is everything that we need, every tactic we're going to do, and every piece of material we need in order to do that tactic. So like you want to send an email. All right, well, we need HTML, we need copy, we need images, and just kind of generating everything we need. We need landing pages. That needs copy, that needs images. What's its URL? Like all those things that we need. And I just enumerated them out. And then I came into this Gantt view and I could do two things really quickly. One, I could set the dates and I could adjust the dates. And that is so much easier when you can get in here and just click and drag these little boxes around to get the date exactly where you need, and it's in relation to everything else. So you know things are going to get done on time. And then it's also just really, again, that kind of leads right into the visual component. Something like this, I much prefer to look at in this way rather than just a list view in the main project, because I really need to see that timeline aspect of it. And then this is the second part of that same project. This is the actual deployment of those tactics. So this is where you can actually see, okay, these are the days things are going live. And this can almost function as sort of a like command center or control board for me. So I can jump in very quickly and see, you know, if it's today launch day or is a Monday after, what needs to get done today, where are we at, and I can see how everything's going to interact with each other. So the final feature I want to talk to you guys about, it's kind of in some ways a small one, but it did also really make a difference for us this year. And this was this concept of optional reviewers. So essentially what this did for us, I mean, it's right there in that bullet point. It kept the reviews moving while also preserving transparency. I mentioned January as an exciting time because we get to see the report. We get to see it. This thing we've been working on for months, we get to see it for the first time. And it's very exciting. And a lot of people kind of pop up over the cubicles and they hear that that's happening and they want to see it too. And a lot of stakeholders kind of almost come out of the woodwork, you might say. And that's great. I'm glad that so many people want to see this and are excited about it. And it's an important piece. We've spent 6 months working on this. This is a lot of resources have gone into this. And as our content program manager, I know that I am going to be relying on this piece for content for the rest of the year. So I want it to be good and I want that feedback. But I also have a deadline. And when you get too many cooks in that kitchen, you can run into problems. And we have in the past when we didn't have optional reviewers of you kind of put everyone on the review. And then there's a couple people that you're waiting on, and you have to figure out, am I going to skip them or wait or remind them, and how many reminders can I send? This was also before automatic review reminders, which I would also say is that it was going to be super helpful as well in 2021. But that's what we were able to do. We were able to kind of push people over and say, okay, you can be here. We want you to see it, but we're going to make you optional because we got to keep this thing rolling. And something else that we did as a best practice was we focused on establishing reviewer roles. We said, why are you here? Why are you on this review? What is it that you're going to contribute? And that can be a little, some people don't want to answer that question, but that's a really important thing to establish, because then you can say everyone is here that's an essential reviewer has a purpose and they know what they're doing in the review, and that also gets you better feedback in the reviews themselves. And again, it just keeps it moving, but we don't have to sacrifice any transparency. And I do want to do a quick plug for the What Kind of Reviewer Are You quiz that we put together. It's a lot of fun. I'm a novelist. No one's surprised by that. But I would definitely encourage everyone to take that and share your results with your team, because it's a lot of fun. And so this is the big reveal. This is where we get to the actual final success metrics of the whole thing here. And some of these we've kind of talked about already. I showed you that we've had over 600 survey respondents. That was up from over 500 in 2019. Again, that goes down to that planning. You saw those Gantt views we had of all the promotional plans. That made it really easy for us to just see what everything was and to execute on it effectively and on time. And we were able to really increase the amount of response that we got. I also credit that to some of that is just the report has now been in circulation for 3 years. We've increased reach every year so people know about it, but it also speaks to we had our act together. And so we were able to get that promotion out early and on time and get those responses in. We had talked about the number of tasks. And again, to me, like I say, seeing this metric was a game-changing moment for me of realizing how much more granularity I had, how much more control we had on this project. When you have one task for something like contributors, that's too much. But the problem with the project, at least for me, there may be some of you who are looking at 160 tasks and you're like, that's nothing. But for me and for this project and our team and how things work here, 73 tasks is not nearly enough. And 160 is much closer to where we need to be. I dare say we'll probably find some more tasks for 2022 2021. I'm sure we'll continue to add to that. But what's really, to me, just seeing that massive jump tells me it was just a paradigm shift going into campaign management. Our publish date, we're able to scoot that up a couple of days. Every day is precious here. So being able to scoot the day up even just a couple of days that's valuable time that we can start distributing that report. We put so much time into it. We want it, and we want to be able to start distributing it as soon as we can. And then this was the real one. This was the jaw hit the floor. I pulled this metric and I was freaking out. And so I kind of knew what our 2019 number was. We did a retrospective and looked at that last year. And so I knew, I actually thought it was 12. That was my guess before I pulled it. I said, it's going to be 12 rounds of review. And that was 11. So it was pretty much right there. And it took us 18 business days to get the final review for the final full report done. And so if you had asked me what we did in 2020, I probably would have said something like, oh, it was probably 7 rounds. I knew it was better. I knew it was a lot better, but I didn't think it was going to be almost, was that a third? I did not think we were going to drop that dramatically down to just 4 rounds of review. Again, this is for, if you've read the report, it's not short. There's a lot in there. No, we didn't dramatically reduce the number of business days, but I actually really like where we landed out, because what I can tell you, 11 reviews in 18 business days is a very different experience than 4 rounds of reviews for 4 versions over 16 business days. That means, 4 and 16 means your reviewers are taking about 4 days on average per round. And again, let's remember, it's a really long report. It's one of the most important pieces we're going to do all year. It deserves time. And what I can tell you we experienced in those 4 rounds is every round was really good, meaningful feedback and really actionable feedback that we were then able to take that and apply it and send another version out, and it was a lot better. And it wasn't like with the 11 rounds, it was like it'd be a little better, and then we decided we didn't like something, and then we'd move up a little bit, and then we didn't like that either. And so we were kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back the whole way. There were definitely rounds on that in 2019 when it took us 11 rounds where that first draft was not of the same quality that the first draft was in 2020. And there were definitely some rounds where the feedback was a little more abrupt and it was a little bit more like, I'm not going to read this because it's not done, or you don't have that headshot from that contributor, so I'm not going to look at it. And that's rough, but it's fair. We didn't have our act together. I didn't have my act together. By having more tasks, 160 tasks and better organization at the top meant when that first version went to review, it was really good. It was the best V1 we've ever done for this report. And that meant the whole review and approval process was so much easier. And then, the final thing I'll say is these are more cushy, sort of soft results, but I felt them very much, which is we had a higher quality report and it was less stressful. It was higher quality because even though we produced the 2020 report in a little bit less time, it was still about 6 months, but it was just a little bit less time with an earlier publish date than we did in 2019. It was a better report. I felt like I had more time to work on it, even though I did it in less. And that feels counterintuitive, but that's what good project management does for you. It sort of creates time where there doesn't seem to be any. And then it was also a lot less stressful. And that's not to say that past reports have been just the most stressful experience ever. But again, I've said this a couple times, it's a big report. It takes a long time. It matters a lot. It's an important piece for us. So there is a lot of pressure to make it good. And when you have 11 rounds of review, you're sitting there watching the dates tick by and you know what your publish date goal is, and you're getting closer and closer and you're getting real nervous about hitting that date. And so there was a lot of, just a lot more of just general stress around the whole process when we had less control over it in 2019. And in 2020, we had it under control. And so it was so much easier to produce it just emotionally. It was a smooth sailing experience. And as the project manager on this, it's really important to me, I don't do it alone. I project manage, but I'm not alone on this. My whole team is the whole marketing team, and several people outside of the marketing team are a part of this process. And it's really important to me that I make sure they have everything they need and I'm supporting them as they're working on this project as well. And I don't want to leave any of them hanging, or they don't have the pieces that they need to do their part of the job. And so I solicited my teammates for some quotes to tell me how much better they like 2020 over 2019. And, these were just a few of the quotes. So Molly Clark, who's our director of marketing, also my boss, I definitely, you want to look good in front of your boss. You want to make sure that you have your act together when they ask you, how's that project going? You want a good answer to that. And so this made me able to not only give her a good answer, it's going well, but also to give her an answer quickly. I knew exactly what was going on. And it also made it easier for her, if I wasn't available in that moment that she needed an answer, she could jump into Ignite and quickly see exactly what was going on. So again, transparency, and it helped her be transparent in the reporting up that she was doing to her boss. Sarah, who is really making the magic happen for InMomentum here today and yesterday, this week, she does a lot of the promotional work. So she really gets in on those promotional efforts and helps, things like building emails and landing pages. Well, when she sits down to do that, she needs all those components. It's my job to make sure she has them. And so again, in Ignite, it's all there. It's all right there on the task, and she can quickly find it, and she can keep going and she can get her stuff done, and she's not busy chasing me around for stuff. And then finally, we've talked a lot about the review and approval process, but that was really the game changer for our designer, I think, because that's who really bears the brunt. Like, I have to go in and see that review and help her with it, but she's the one who actually has to deal with all those rounds of review and all those versions if we have too many. So it was really nice for her, I think, this year to maybe we had our acts together, and she's getting really high quality feedback that she can apply, and we know we're moving forward with each version. We know each step forward is a step forward. So it was really good to have that experience with the team. The last thing I want to say, just as kind of a random plug that I hadn't thought about going into this presentation, but I realized, and I'll just back up so that you can see the data slide again. So COVID-19 hit right when we would have done our retrospective, and there's been some talk about that at InMomentum yesterday and today. And we normally would do one, and we did not have a chance to do it in 2020 because right around mid-March, when we probably would have sat down to do it, we all had to go home for coronavirus, and then everything had to pivot, and that was a crazy time. But so I didn't ever actually sit down initially and pull this data. And so I did it to build this presentation, and I was amazed by how easy it was to get all these numbers out of Ignite and how quick, like, it was easy to figure out how to build the report. And then I just hit the button and it ran, and that's including my slow Wi-Fi. So that was just so easy. And it reminded me how much data is there and how easy it is I don't remember how many business days these things took. That's, in Ignite. And so it was just really helpful to have all the templates are there. When we build the 2021 project, we've already got the full template from 2020. It's going to be real quick to get that set up now that we've done that work one time. So anyway, just a plug for the reporting and the retrospectives. I know we've talked about that. You should do them. I learned that lesson anew again this year. So that pretty much wraps it up for me.